Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Moser Cie, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to do is that I want to take a look at 10 watch brands that I think are good for collectors. Uh, there probably is many that I left out or double that I could have included that I didn't for one reason or another. These are the 10 that I thought have the most promise in a lot of ways. But like I said, there are a lot of other ones, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people who like them better. One major exception, I didn't include any watches with silicone hairsprings. I don't care for them in mechanical watches, but that's me, not everybody. This leaves out all of the watches made by Swatch, Patek Philippe, even some by Rolex and now Tudor, unfortunately. Okay, enough of that. Let's take a look at the ones that I like. And like I said, I'm not looking for agreement or anything like that. But somebody in collection, the things that I was looking for are the variety, for one thing. Not always variety, but usually variety was important. Price was important so that you have a range of prices. Now, some of the ranges start pretty high, I tell you that, on certain brands, but nevertheless, they do have a range. The other thing is that they all have a good movement. Now, this comes from two sources. Either they make the movement themselves or they own a movement maker or are part of a movement maker. So let's get started. The first two are Seiko and Grand Seiko. These watches are really amazing, I think. Seiko has great watches and really a variety of prices. I have probably the least expensive one, the Seiko 5, but it's a nice one because it had so many new things when it first came out. I think it was in 1967. There were 5 innovations. So anyhow, but it was like $90 or something like that. But in terms of a collector, here these are 2 examples. By the way, there are far more models than what I'm going to present, but I just want to present a sample to give you an idea of both the price and the type of watch. The Presage GMT, I like it a lot. It's 625. It's an automatic with a Seiko movement. The Elegance is another one from the Elegance collection. This is another GMT. This one's 4,900. You can see the big price differences in different models. The thing that Seiko has, it has models that are more affordable, and then they have other ones that are more fancy. Okay, this next one, Jaeger-LeCoultre. This is one of my favorite watchmakers. They started off as movement makers and eventually decided they went into watches. They're owned by the Richemont Group. That's important to know for different reasons. Anyway, here are 3. The first one is on the far left is the Polaris, and it has a rotating rehaut, which is a sort of like an inner bezel that rotates, and so you can do different things with that. In fact, you can make these into dual time watches using that rehaut if you want. The second one is a Reverso Tribute. Now this one is pre-owned. In fact, oh wait a minute, no, I'm sorry, it's not pre-owned. This one's about $10,000, which is not cheap, but you can find pre-owned ones for around $7,200. The last one is the Geophysic Universal World Time. And this is one thing it's important to understand, something about the history of the watches. At some point, the people who owned Jaeger-LeCoultre, namely Richemont, they brought in their bean counters and look where money was being made. They didn't care about innovation and a lot of other things that cranky watch collectors do. There was a Geophysic line that just had some of the best watches, and they were great prices. you can still find those on the pre-owned market. So there's a wide range of great watches that are by Jaeger-LeCoultre, and I probably mispronounced everything, so I'm sorry. Okay, this next one is Hermes. Now, they don't make their own movement, but they own 25% of a movement maker named Vacheron. And Vacheron has fabulous movements. A lot of watches that are very good watches have Vacheron movements, and they're part of a vertical organization that is owned by the Sandoz Family Foundation, and Parmigiani is their watch that they make, and then they make all of the different parts in a vertical organization, but they also sell some of these to other watchmakers, such as Hermes. But Hermes, on top of that, owns 25% of Vacheron. Okay. The Hermes H08 is their sports watch, extremely popular, very well priced. The entry level one is $5,600, and the pre-owned, I found a pre-owned one for $3,650. So this again is something that, you know, if you don't have that certain amount, you can always look in the pre-owned market and the secondary market. A lot of people mistakenly call the secondary market the gray market. There's nothing gray about it at all. It's a secondary market for overstock that a watchmaker has, and they need to get rid of them, and so they'll sell them on the secondary market, and so then they can advertise them for lower prices. That's essentially what the role of the secondary market is, plus all kinds of used watches. Another one, again, these are ones they're still producing, is the Slim de Hermes. Has a caliber HI 1950. Again, this is by Vacheron. $77.25 is their entry-level price for that. Pre-owned ones I found as low as $2,024. There's another one they don't manufacture anymore called Dressage, and Dressage has a lot of really, really interesting models, and they were one of the first ones to use an Hermes a Vacheron movement for Hermes. They've got some that are very expensive, but the one for entry-level Dressage, you can pick one up for about $2,500. Finally, there's the Hermes Arcu. I found one for $1,603, and there are a lot of different models of this. This is, again, one of those things that if you look around, you can find some really excellent watches at much better prices than you're going to find brand new. Okay, moving right along. One of the tip-top places I think, for collectors is Nomos Glashütte. What they have a wide variety with one exception. They don't make chronograph, which is surprising, but because they're so popular. But they have a lot of other watches that are very interesting. The Tangenti 38 date GO. This watch has so many different dials, and so you can find a dial that you like. The price, and this is full MSRP price, is $23.10. Another thing, they have their movements. They have movements that are either called DUW or Alpha. Okay, the DUW are fully made by Nomos. The Alphas are a version of the Pazu 7001 that they have pretty much made their own. They make them themselves, and so there is a difference. And they're a good deal less expensive than the ones with the DUW movement, because at least in my opinion, DUW is much better, even though the Pazu 7001 base is a good watch. These, I think, are really quite excellent. The three here, I have the one in the middle, Autobahn, Neomatic, 41. 41 is the millimeters, 41 millimeters. So it's a little bigger watch. On sort of the upper side, and this is the other nice thing, is that when you get to the top models of any watchmaker, you're going to find them to be much more expensive. This one is the Zurich. Zurich is one of the models they have. World Time, Midnight. The other thing I like about this, all of these movements are 3 hertz, 21,600. I like the lower hertz. I did a video on it several times. So if you're interested, you want to know why, you can check one of them out. Okay. Great place for collectors to go searching for something they like. Chopard, this one is a relatively new one to me. I never thought too much about Chopard, but they've really made some real movement in 2 ways. One, I think their prices they have more variety, so everything isn't way out of reach. And if you got watches that are way out of reach, they're not going to sell too well if your audience is one that, depending on their expectations. The LUC is sort of any of their watches with LUC means they have an in-house movement. This one is called the LUC XPS Twist QF. I'm not sure what the twist is for, but that's something you can take a look at. QF is for Quality Fourier. It's sort of like the Geneva seal for people who live in the Fourier area. Chopard is one of the few watch companies that has watches in both the Geneva seal as well as in the ones for Quality Fourier. They have, I guess, they have another factory in Geneva, and that's what you have to have. Okay, so that's one. It's 22,900 is the base price of that. Chopard Alpine Eagle 41. 41 again is the size, the 41 millimeters. This one is called the Chopard 0101-C. Now notice one of the movements starts off with LUC, the other one starts off with Chopard. Chopard is an in-house movement by Chopard. It's COSC rated, so it's a good movement. The ones that have the quality, the Fourier quality mark on them are also COSC, and so I mean they're chronometer rated, all of them are. But this is a watch, and I tell you, I think if you go to the pre-owned market, you can find some really nice watches pre-owned that are far more affordable for you. Okay, this next group is the Zenith. Now Zenith is owned by LVMH, Louis Vuitton, and they own a number of other brands as well, but this one I think is the most, there are things I like about it and things I don't like about it. They're fully mechanical watches. They tend to have a little higher frequency. They have 36,000 semi-oscillations per hour. Some of them have the 28,800. Now, the Elite Classic, this is a line, this is sort of their older movement, was called the Elite. And it's a very, just like a good solid standard movement on it. This one runs for $6,100. You can find them for around $1,500 in the pre-owned market, so that's not a bad place to look for them. The Pilot has what's called an El Primero. El Primero was the name that Zenith gave to their automatic chronograph movement, and there's a lot of discussion about that, but I won't go into it here. But it's one of their better ones, and they have it both. It's used in both the chronograph like the Chronomaster Original Boutique Edition that's up there, as well as ones like the Pilot. And the prices, as you can see, they have pretty good range. Now they go in the upper range, especially if you put in precious metals, gold or platinum, then big jump in prices. Again, this is something you might want to take a look at on the pre-owned market. Now, H. Moser is, when you start thinking about, like Chopard, you want to get into a higher horology. And I think H. Moser is a real good place to go. I'm wearing an H. Moser sweater that I got. They had a drawing and I got one, so they're a lot of fun in this winter time here. And I'm also wearing an H. Moser watch right now, so I like them a lot. Here's the thing, though, is that there's sort of in early 2000s, H. Moser with one of the H. Moser relatives came in, they sort of gave it a rebirth. And a company that was part of them, I'm not sure what the relationship was, but they were called Precision Engineering. They did the movements. This one is from that early era. Then later on, I think it's somehow 2012, but I'm not positive about that date, the Malin family bought the whole thing, and they came out with a whole slew of really interesting watches. The Heritage Dual Time, the Streamliner line, the Pioneer line. The Pioneer tends to be their entry level. And then they have the Streamliner Flyback Chronograph Automatic. Now the thing about their chronograph is that it has an agonograph movement in it. In fact, a lot of the special movements in H. Moser watches are by Agonor. H. Moser owned part of Agonor, but it's still very independent. It's one of the top movement makers in Switzerland. And so here you have a lot of range here, and again in the pre-owned market, the only problem for collectors is that they have a relatively high entry level. That would be $12,900. But if you can find some of the older ones, like this one, this is their it's called the Henry Double Hairspring, which was really a cool watch. Anyhow, and some of the older Endeavors that are called the Mayu and the Monar, something like that. They got these dumb names for the earlier ones, but they're really good watches. One you might want to take a look at. Okay, now here are two brands I have. One, I sort of see both brands, Habring2 and Kudoke, as watchmaker brands. In other words, the watchmaker Richard Habring and his wife Maria started this company, Habring2, and it's in Austria. And they have a very few watches they make every year. They're all handmade. They're fantastic watches, but the prices are very reasonable. So you have something by a watchmaker, a real watchmaker, not something that the whole thing was done by a big machine. The caliber A11, now they have A11B is for the basic. They have, this one is A11S, manual wound, 28,800 semi-oscillations per hour, and 48-hour reserve. Now, Stefan Kudoke's from Dresden, Germany, and his watches, now these are right now still under 10,000. I think when I first saw them, they were around 6,000, 7,000, something like that, and they started going up in price. He also won 2 Grand Prix awards. Same with Habring2. I think they've won 4 awards. Both of these brands are, to me, excellent horology by the actual the watchmaker himself. two great brands. There are other ones too. Usually they're a little pricier. By the way, too, Kudoke, Stephane Kudoke is a member of the AHCI, which is the independent watchmakers. They're just the top watchmakers are in that. Now, this next one is probably fairly well known as a high-end watchmaker, Vacheron Constantin. The reason I like them is they're also owned by the Richemont Group, which is sort of a funny thing. They have, in 2013, they introduced a caliber called the 4400, and in 2016, they introduced a caliber called the 5100. The 5100 and the 4100 are used in a lot of different watches with variations on them and so forth. Both of them have the hallmark of Geneva, better known to us as the Geneva seal. They're very different watches, though. I have one called the Historique Americain 1921. It has a 4400 in it. Great movement. It does take a long time to wind it. It's a real winder. I used to have an overseas, like the one on the far right. The overseas, though, that I had it didn't have a Vacheron Constantin movement. And that's why when in 2016 they came out with the 5100, I learned a lot about it, and it's fantastic movement. Now, another one, this is sort of a funny thing. It's called the 56 self-winding. And it's the only watch that Vacheron Constantin has that does not have the Geneva seal. The reason behind that is that they have a movement by Val Fleurier. Val Fleurier is a movement company that was set up by the Richemont Group for all of the different watches within the Richemont Group. And so I guess it doesn't meet the Geneva seal standards, but boy, the prices, I mean, you have at $12,700, that's still a huge amount of money, but compared to the other ones that are sort of the entry traditional and the entry overseas at those prices. So thought you should know about that. Okay, now this final one is Rolex. Rolex is probably the most popular collected watch. There's sort of a special mindset, and I'm not picking on Rolex, believe me, but rather there's so many nuances. I mean, if you're a Rolex collector, for example, one watch I like a lot is called the Milgauss, and the Milgauss, which they got rid of. They got rid of some of the ones that I like. That's another reason I grumble about them. But what the Milgauss, no, it's not from The Simpsons. The Milgauss had was that they had a Faraday cage that protected the movement from magnetization. Now, the Gauss was Milgauss 1000 Gauss. The new ones with the silicon hairsprings that I don't like have 15,000 Gauss, so, but still I like the idea. The other thing I found out was that one of the models of the Air King, and I like the Air King because it's got this crazy bloodhound dial on it from a speed racer. Sort of a nutty thing in there, but I like that. It's also one of the entry-level prices. I have the Submariner in there, and the Submariner is like super popular, really a very popular watch from Rolex, and I like it. It's just a big, big solid thump of a watch, but a good one. Works well. Okay, $9,100. The Air King is $7,450, probably more to my liking. They have another one called the Oyster Perpetual. The Oyster Perpetual, they all have this caliber 3230 in them, which surprised me. Like I said, the Air King used to have the Milgauss movement in it. I thought, wow, that's a great thing, because it was about, I think the Milgauss was about $2,000 more than the Air King. I thought, oh, you get a great one there. Listen, this has been all of these I think are great for collection. Other ones that I didn't mention are like Parmigiani, but Parmigiani made a change, but I think the older Parmigianis, not real old, but like 21st century, you can find some fabulous watches there, and there are a lot of other brands you can too, but these I thought for collectors would be great. I'd like to hear from you, and I know some of you are going to say, well, I'm surprised you didn't have X. If it has to do with silicone hairsprings, that's the way it goes, at least with me. You may like them, that's fine. But anyway, no matter what, I want to know what you think. Let me know. This is an opportunity to subscribe if you want. Until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Cie, the art and science of watch collection.